The Phoenix Suns got another signature win, and Bradley Beal finally made his presence felt. On today's episode of Locked On Suns, why this is what a Big 3 win is supposed to feel like. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for making Locked On Suns your first listen post-game on a national TV Thursday, a Beat LA Thursday night. Maybe it's Friday morning for you. Wherever and whenever you are, welcome to the show. If you have not already, hit follow or subscribe wherever you're finding us. We are free and available everywhere, including YouTube. So just hit that button, and you will get a show every single Monday through Friday all season long. So become an everydayer and get locked onto the Phoenix Suns right along with me all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com and use the code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's jasemedical.com. More from them later on in the show, but let's get right to it. Phoenix Suns win 127-109. Part of me was tempted to record this a little bit early, but I didn't want to jinx anything, and the Suns did make it a little bit interesting. The lead was under 20 at one point in the fourth quarter, but then felt like Durant hitting the bench actually ended up proving to be some good voodoo for the Suns, and they carried it home with an 18-point victory and a game where they led by 30 or more for large stretches. But where we're going to go first for our moment of the game, which is where we always start, is the third quarter. That, of course, is when the Suns scored 39 points. But we need to get more specific than that, right? As we do. So what this quarter showed was something in Bradley Beal's arsenal that I don't think had been tapped into yet. And that's why it was so big. In addition to just being a masterclass, he scored 20 points in this quarter. 20 of his 37 came in the third. But even more impressively, again, something we had not seen before, was his two-man game with Kevin Durant. And normally when I would say those two names together, right, what would we think? Two-man game with a guard and a forward. You would think Bradley Beal was the guy orchestrating that, right? But that was not the case. It was Kevin Durant handling the ball, and it was Bradley Beal screening. And again, Beal scored 20 points here. 3 of Durant's 5 assists came during this stretch. Okay? I don't know why we had not seen this before. But man, do I hope we see it again, because it's lethal. The reason it's so effective is, or there's a lot of reasons, right? I mean, one, the IQ of both of those guys, the unselfishness of both of those guys, the shot-making talent at all 3 levels of both of those guys. Of course, it's kind of baked in. I don't want to understate things. Obviously, they're special talents, and that's why it even is an option in the first place. But the reason that particular grouping and that setup with Durant handling it is so lethal is you cannot switch it, right? It would be the same if Beal was handling, but they clearly wanted to get Beal on the move a little bit, in motion, and take advantage of his stop and start, stop and go game, his ability and kind of the footwork to get jumpers off at odd angles on a dime and just to create more flow in the offense. And frankly, Durant has been the most reliable playmaker for this team when you look at the season as a whole. And when you cannot switch it, and the reason I say that is those guys are different sizes. A lot of the time, especially with Booker sort of being the nominal point guard for this team, Booker and Durant are being guarded by similar-sized players, right? Think about tonight, Reddish and Prince, or at times Vanderbilt and Prince. Even Vanderbilt and Davis, Vanderbilt and James, Reddish and James, Prince, like the Lakers do that to you. But because the Suns had such a clear emphasis on attacking Austin Reeves, and because Beal a lot of the time is going to be guarded by weaker defenders, whoever that might be, throw in Max Christie, D'Angelo Russell, the Suns were smart about poking at the right matchups tonight, and the Beal-Durant pick and roll allows them to do that. And it can go either way, right? Because when Durant does have the ball in his hands, you don't have to worry about throwing an entry pass once he gets his mismatch, the same way we saw the Suns struggle to consistently do early on. And he can just go to work. But otherwise, again, in the flow and the rhythm of setting a screen and popping, setting a screen and rolling like Beal was doing, he's already in motion. And most of the time, the bigger guys who are now switched on to him can't keep up. Beal's quickness is one of the things that makes him elite. And so you kind of add all of that together and you get a pretty damn near unguardable action. Now, it's unguardable tonight because the Lakers weren't ready for it. Because, again, the Suns hadn't gone to it enough. Even though, and the reason I said enough or criticize them for not doing it yet is the Wizards did this constantly. Porzingis as a ball handler, Kuzma as a ball handler, Beal even as a ball handler, different types of dribble handoff, pick and roll, all sorts of different two-man actions with those three, some duo within that trio. And so it's unguardable once. You know, is it unguardable every night? Well, not necessarily, because some teams can put better defenders on Beal. Some teams will be ready to collapse on his rolls or send help to his pop, catch and shoot opportunities. There's all sorts of things once you put it on film, once it's on the scouting report, that will make it go away. But a reminder here, right? Booker was on the court for a lot of this. Not the whole time. There were moments near the end of the third when he was off a couple minutes, when Beal continued to cook. But Booker was a floor spacer for a lot of this stretch. And that brings us to the big takeaway of the game. Because even if this gets scouted a little bit, maybe it's never 20 points in a quarter and 3 assists from Durant for the foreseeable future. But it just highlights how many options this team has. And my big takeaway from tonight is that this is what a big 3 win ought to look like. And it's not just on the offensive end. We'll get into what that means and what I mean next. First, today's show brought to you by Jase Medical. I know we come to sports to talk and enjoy something as a distraction from real life, but according to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin and others in the middle of a pretty bad flu season. And that can be a little freaky, but can't imagine a more helpless feeling than a child or a family member having a supply chain issue keep them from something that they needed to get better. Thankfully, Jase Medical is working to solve that problem, and their Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, and more. This stuff could happen to any of us, of course. So visit jasemedical.com, complete a physician encounter to get started. It will then be reviewed by a board-certified physician. These are professionals doing their jobs, and your medications will then be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. So go to jasemedical.com and use the offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your first order. All right, let's keep it rolling. What do I mean by the fact that this is a Big 3 win, and why does this one indicate that? Why is this one so sweet? Let me just put it that way. More basic. It's a Big 3 win because these guys combined for 86 points and 14 assists to just 7 turnovers. All of them shot at least 50% from the field. All of them made at least 2 3-pointers. And all of them were at least a plus 15 in the box score. When these 3 guys were on the court, in any combination, good things tended to happen. That is what you have to do to win with a roster built this way, right? Because we'll get to the rest of the rotation, but if you look, Nurkic had a couple nice post-ups against Anthony Davis, but 9 points, 2 assists. Okogie, you get why he's out there, but not an offensive threat. Bol Bol, not an offensive threat in terms of, he's not going to put up 30 points. And Eric Gordon was ice cold, and that was the Suns' rotation. That was the 8 guys that played. They went up against a pretty fearsome Lakers defense and a Lakers team that, after, yes, LeBron ended up sort of being not benched like because he was bad, benched because they just kind of hung it up for the night. But if this was within reach, we know those two can put a game away, LeBron and AD. And this is a team that's beaten the Suns 3 times. This is how you have to win with a roster built this way. Early in the first half, I thought that we might see a game where, for the most part, at least 2 of the stars were on the court at all times. That didn't end up panning out. There was a Booker-only stretch. There was a Beal-only stretch. I'm not sure if there was a KD-only stretch, but okay, so maybe the rotation is still getting figured out, and only playing 8 guys makes it hard to do that. Well, maybe it makes it easier. I don't know. Either way, it didn't happen. But it could, and it will in the playoffs. I would bet you, and Booker spoke to this week, that in the postseason, especially when these guys have it going so much, you will see 2 of them on the court at least at all times. That would be my guess. But it was not just offense tonight. Durant did an incredible job guarding LeBron. And again, that is something that happens when you build the roster this way, when you have a Big 3 and limited depth. Because the Suns are starting 2 of their 3 non-max, non-minimum players, right? Nurkic makes 18 or so million. Grayson Allen makes 7 or so. Those were both parts of the DeAndre Ayton trade. Nasir Little was back healthy today after missing several games with knee tendonitis. Didn't play. Maybe he does in the future. But when you do that, when you run your roster that way, when you run your rotation that way, you kind of have to roll with what's working. And what's been working this year is Grayson Allen. In general, he's been awesome, but he's been the best guy to play off of the other 4 starters, the other 3 stars. And that makes you a small team. And when you play a big team like the Lakers, where nobody in the starting lineup is shorter than like 6'6", or whatever Reeves or Reddish is, then you have to rely on your best guys to play legitimate defense, guard actual offensive threats. And Durant had to do that against LeBron. He had to do that against Kawhi on Monday. And we were caught up being pretty negative about that Clippers game, but I will be going back and watching, and I want to plug this is something that is still happening, and I'm awaiting some bigger changes with the show that will allow me to really dive back in, but the Locked On Suns Insider text alerts have not gone away. I'm still plugging away there, and there will be another video coming this week, and that is my promise. It will be in Locked On Suns Insider subscriber video feeds, and it is a video on Durant's defense against both Kawhi and LeBron. And I maybe shouldn't have been so negative about it on Monday, or I could have found the positive to hype up there, but he did it again tonight. And that is also, again, a symptom of what has to happen when you build the roster this way. Durant has to guard LeBron James some nights. It's just the realities of the situation. You don't always want to have Grayson Allen lunging at Luka Doncic pull-up threes on Christmas while he drops 50, right? You'd like to maybe have that be Booker or anybody else. If it's not going well, you'd like to have some adjustments. And so kudos to Durant for stepping up and doing that. These are the types of things that have to continually happen in order for the Suns to win games. There's no way around it. I mean, we're at the bottom of the barrel watching these guys and wondering which of these wings is going to step up. The answer seems to be none of them right now. We'll get to that, but I don't blame Frank Vogel for running an 8-man rotation, and one of those 8 was Bol Bol, somebody that a lot of fans and, NBA aficionados thought was a waste of a roster spot. And obviously he's proved them wrong, but that's far from some sort of sure thing, So I say all of this to just reiterate. This is how a Big 3 win is supposed to look. Maybe it doesn't need to be 86 points and 14 rebounds or 14 assists every night. It doesn't. But this level of playing off of one another, efficiently scoring and playmaking, and contributing on the defensive end, those are non-negotiables. And it's not about me being a, pain in the butt and just wanting to get a takeoff. This is the reality. This is what they signed up for. This is what James Jones built. This is how the Suns win, to quote my Uncut Gems t-shirt. This is how they win, right? And it was a great start. Signature win. Road win against the Lakers, who are also a rested team. I know it's just the Lakers, and they've been in a rut lately, but this team was 3-0 against them. This team has an identity. They win a lot of games. They were in the conference finals last year, made it further in the postseason than Phoenix did. This is a nice signature win that they can hang their hat on, and they did it because their best 3 guys stepped up the way that they needed to. Let's talk about Bol Bol and a few box score oddities to close out the show. First, today's show brought to you by Prize Picks, who have come in and they have fixed daily fantasy sports. I don't know about you, but I was so anti-daily fantasy sports until I found Prize Picks. The reason being is I don't feel like I'm getting sharked anymore because Prize Picks doesn't force you to play against a league, a team, a pool, anything. It is you versus the Prize Picks player projections. And with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across multiple sports like football and basketball from the Specials League, which is created specifically for those combo projections. It includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues, meaning you can mix and match. We have the NFL Super Wildcard Weekend coming up. Maybe you want Tyreek Hill. Well, yeah, let's go Tyreek Hill receptions. And let's say the Suns against Portland on Sunday, you want the Kevin Durant assists. There you go. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy for injuries, quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, all making PrizePicks, the number one daily fantasy sports app. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA to get involved and use the code LockedOnNBA when you make your first deposit to get it matched up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA, promo code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, we're closing out the show. Let's get into the young forward breakout watch. And man, have we cycled through a lot of those. In this segment this season, we had a stretch where Nasir Little was playing well, even started. We saw the Keita Bates-Diop experience back in Halloween week when he looked like against the Spurs the answer to all the problems the Suns were going to have on the wing. Nope. We even talked about Jordan Goodwin quite a bit here. Chimezie Metu was starting multiple games as recently as like last week. And all of them are out of the rotation now. Instead, somebody that I didn't even think was a forward, although maybe I should have known better, Bol Bol is the young forward, the only of the kind of newcomers to even be playing right now. And Mike Vigil, who does the Timeline podcast over at Blue Wire, they do a great job, tweeted today, it would be difficult to explain to anyone who's not a Suns fan or doesn't watch them every day just how big it is for this team that Bol Bol has just not been a big negative lately. And that's the perfect way to say it, right? I don't think anybody in the organization or in this fan base necessarily loves how critical Bol Bol has become, just considering that he is, at least previously in his career, has been a pretty volatile player, pretty mistake-prone, but man, if he has not limited those mistakes lately. It's hard to even say that right now. It kind of feels rude. It kind of feels disrespectful. I've mentioned it time and again. The guy who played next to Drew Eubanks a few times in December and just was allowing lobs at the basket and missing his assignment in transition and fouling all the time and turning it over. I don't know where that guy went. The Suns coached it out of him. He buckled down and realized what it was going to take to get on the court and what this system was asking of him. And man, if he has not really been solid. And that's the most surprising thing to say, right? Because, and I know I've talked about this before last week or maybe even earlier this week, I did the 3 rules to playing Bol Bol, and I believe it was play size around him. It was be ready to pull the plug. I can't even remember the other one, but the surprising thing to say is the steadiness. If he had just made threes or had some hot scoring nights or even some flashy passes or highlight dunks, those are all things we know he can do, right? That's what made him tantalizing. That's what made him a 5-star recruit going into Oregon and somebody who prior to draft night of 2018, correct? Who we thought would be a first rounder. That's why he's tantalizing. But to call him steady, I don't know if that's an adjective we would have used previously. But tonight, 2 offensive rebounds, 2 assists, 0 turnovers, 2 steals, 2 blocks, and just quick, simple, solid decision making. He keeps the ball moving when it gets to him. He shoots when he's open. He had a seal against D'Angelo Russell in the post today where the Suns identified it and he posted him up deep in the paint and got a bucket out of it. You know, he only had 1 foul in 17 minutes, and whether he's kind of, having to guard somebody more on the perimeter or he is more stationed around the basket in a zone or kind of ignoring his man and playing free safety, kind of hasn't mattered. And again, to say that about him is the last thing we would have expected. And it's a real testament to him. It's a real testament to this coaching staff and even this locker room. We know he has relationships with the star players. It's all very, very impressive. Let's close with the box score oddity. And again, it's not really a box score stat, but we have a few box score stats we can point to here. The Suns had 48 points in the paint and 28 points off of turnovers tonight. 28 points off turnovers, 23 fast break, 48 points in the paint. Those are the three that I think you would have to circle, as well as the 13 offensive rebounds. So those are easy points, right? Those are the one. Well, not all points in the paint are easy, but those are the best points to get. Putbacks, layups and dunks, transition points. That is a signal that this team is, as much as it can, they're always going to be mid-range heavy, but they're doing enough of the other stuff to keep things even. And for them, look, sometimes the points in the paint, sometimes that's going to be floaters, kind of short mid-rangers. But I thought tonight you saw Beal really attack the basket. You saw most guys on this team not afraid to challenge Anthony Davis. And especially compared to how terrified they seemed to be guarding or trying to score on Jaren Jackson Jr. on Sunday night, I think it was really refreshing to see them challenge AD and be rewarded for it. Again, they won the points in the paint battle. They got 23 free throw attempts up on down the line. But the deeper, which is via cleaning the glass stat that I want to hit here, which is not really a box score stat necessarily, is the Suns' transition efficiency. Okay? They were bonkers in transition tonight. Overall, cleaning the glass counted them as having a 125.7 offensive rating in this game, which, considering the Lakers are a pretty good defense, is incredible. That would be, if you were to put it out over the course of a season, 125.7 would lead the NBA by a good margin in terms of points per 100 possessions. But what transition did for them is added, according to Cleaning the Glass's calculations, 13.6 points to that offensive rating. So if you think about it this way, without being as effective in transition as the Suns were, they would have gone from a 125.7 offensive rating, which I just told you is very, very good, to a 112.1 offensive rating, which, if you want to compare that to a season-long number for the NBA this season, 112.1 would put them just above the Washington Wizards at 25th in offense. So, what transition did for the Suns tonight, what their aggressive pushing, their ability to force the Lakers into turnovers and score on the fast break out of that, playing with better pace overall, what that did is allowed them to go from scoring at a pace equivalent to the Wizards to scoring at a pace better than the Indiana Pacers. That's why it is such a big deal for this team to play decisively, play quickly, focus on running off of missed shots, certainly running off of turnovers when they can force them, and sometimes even running off of made baskets. It's really important because it makes that big of a difference, which I just illustrated with the data. That will wrap us up. Awesome win. Breakout night for Beal. Lots to build on. Hope it happens. Enjoy your weekend. Going out with a Suns win is always a very nice thing. We will be back Sunday night recapping Suns Blazers with Brandon Duenas. Don't forget to subscribe to the Locked On Suns Insider text alerts, where I will have a video breaking down KD's defense against Kawhi and LeBron on Friday for all of you. That is at the link in the show description or at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSuns. I'll catch you guys next week.